me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I love Dylan. I don't know if you can see up there, but I have Crystals, and she's my girl. I love her. So I really identify with her.
She was so much fun to write. She really was having a character that had no stress about anything you threw her way. It was such a difference because normally you give the characters all these stressing points, and her, the whole idea was no stress, and that made her so much fun.
She's like my idol of what I want to be as a mom. Just be chill and not worry, and just go
Yep.
with like the vibes and the auras, and just like let it go. So I
Yep.
loved her, and I
Yeah,
loved
she
the
was.
dynamic with her and Courtney, because he's like the worrywart, and that's
Mhm.
totally me. I am like anxiety to 1000, and so it was really cool to see those two play off each other.
I think it's so funny how many of the readers who love that book are like, Courtney was so me. I'm so Courtney. Because typically you usually like the main character, like the female main character who's you. But everyone's like, I'm so Courtney. I'm Courtney. I worry about everything. I'm so anxious. I stress all the time. I just love that book. And now I just think it's so funny that that's the case with that particular one. I think it's probably
Yeah.
because everyone wants a friend like Dylan. You just want that person in your life. So,
Yes. And they're very hard to come across, like someone that's chill like that. Like, I think I've only maybe met one or two people that are like kind of like that, but they don't get to that point where they're just like a little bit before
yep.
her. But no, that whole series, like, you guys did such an amazing job with interconnecting them, and they're all like found family, and the whole interlacing of all of those stories was like masterfully done. Like, I applaud you guys, because it was really, really good.
It was so much fun creating that world and getting to stay in it and getting to write in it and revisit the old characters and stuff. It it was such a great world that we created together, and I think having four of us put different ideas and characters and vibes into it, it really just made it so good. I don't just well rounded and relatable, and people just adore it. So I'm very lucky
Yes.
to still get to write in it.
Yes, I love that you kept going with it and did like the spin-offs of the other players. Like, I
Yeah.
love that. That I didn't want it to end, so I'm glad you did that, because I was like, I want more.
Yeah,
So,
well, I did too. When I was writing, I was like, I don't want to leave these characters and go somewhere else. I want to stay with them. I want to revisit them. I like Courtney and Beckett. I love them. They're my favorite relationship that came out of that series. I mean, the couples are great, but that bromance is so much fun. It's anytime I throw them in a scene, it's so easy to just dive into them and have them laugh. It's just they're great. So I couldn't leave
yes.
them behind. They had to come with me.
Yes, exactly. I on a side note, because of Beckett, I found a shirt that says "Seriously, what?" And it has a duck, and I bought it just because of that. Because I was like, it's Beckett. So I
Uh-huh.
love all of the characters, and just, oh, they were all so good, and all the different story points, like the different stages in life that you each picked up on, and how you all connected them, and they were just really great. And I loved the fake out. Like, oh my golly, Emerson, he was so, so good. He was such a good character, and that whole story and her background and just how they came together, it was just, and the ending of that, I was like crying, like when they're all, I don't want to give away the ending, but the whole ending with everybody in the office, and they're like, no, this isn't, we're doing it this way. And I was just like,
I
oh.
it is. It was it I almost teared up writing that scene because it was such the ending that he needed as a character to get to that scene that was so good. I that how they all reacted a little bit different and had their little thing they said, and it just I loved that scene. That was one of my
Yeah,
favorites that I've ever written. It's my one of my favorites in the book and ever, just because it was on point of closing out his story.
exactly. And like all the way through the book, I kept on going, like, what's going on? Like, what? Why? What is going on? Like, what's happening with that? I'm like, this doesn't make any sense because of X, Y, and Z. And then finally at the end, I was like, So it was perfectly done. So I'm looking forward to the next book. When does that one come out?
It comes out, I think it's October 11th.
October 11th.
It's
Okay.
October 11th. Yeah. And that one's fun because you get back with Dylan. Dylan's in that one a lot. So, I've had fun re-hanging out with her doing that. And it's not, I think everyone had an expectation of what Emerson's book was going to be going into it, and it wasn't. Nobody was disappointed, but I don't think it was exactly how everyone expected. I think you're going to find the same thing with Kyle, that you're going to get into it and you're going to be like, oh, wow, there's more layers to him than just the playboy that doesn't want to settle down. So he was very fun to write. And the single mom has a neurodiverse child in the book. So that representation was, I do too, and that representation was a little stressful, but also like it was great to be able to like write a character that way and like have it be very accurate because I live this every day. So like that was very cool too.
That is one of the main reasons I'm so excited for that. I don't know if I mentioned to you when I was chatting through, I actually have 2 kids on the spectrum. Both of my children are. And so I live it every day. And I had to reschedule our interview because of a mishap with my son during one of his meltdowns.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's
exhausting. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, I don't know if you feel this way, but when you're in public, like there's hardcore judgment about how your kids behave. And you're like, I'm just trying to get through the day. Okay. You don't understand. And I am trying here. And it was great to be able to put that in it too. Like the perspective of her just being like, look, I know you're judging me and I'm trying my best here. And we all just try every day. So that was really good too.
No, I agree with you on that. Like a lot of the time, like, especially like in a store, like if my daughter or my son are having a meltdown, people were like staring. I'm like, you're just making it worse. Can you like just go about your day, pretend I'm not here? Like, I know this looks strange to you, but it's not what you think it is. So just move along. So it's definitely a very lonely road to walk.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. But and a lot of times I use like the headphones and stuff like that for him, and like people will be like staring at you like, what are you doing? Why does he have that on? Like, what does he doesn't be in the real world. Like, that's a real hard world for him. Like, I don't know if you get that. That's not the most comfortable place to be. So
yes,
getting to like express all of that, it was hard because like I was living it, and usually writing is more of an escape, and I didn't get that so much with this book, but it definitely...
It was probably cathartic, though, right?
Yeah.
Cathartic to write it out.
Yeah, it was a different kind of cathartic. So,
yeah.
I liked that.
Yeah, I love that you put that, because a lot of people, like I've read a couple arcs lately, and there are more people writing about neurodivergent people, which I really like because it just brings it more to everybody who's maybe not familiar with it or surrounded by it. It gives them a sensitivity. I think they get to see something that they won't normally get introduced to, and then they can read and go, oh, okay, well, maybe I should check myself when I might be in that situation where I come across that, and then like react differently. So I always like tell people, like, my son's like a Picasso painting. Like, he's all jumbled up because he doesn't talk, but he's very, very smart, but he just is different than you. So I'm really glad that more authors and yourself are putting that in there, because the more it gets out there, the less stigma I think will be around it, and more understanding.
Yeah, and the more people will become comfortable with it too, and see it from an inside perspective a little bit more, not just from the outside. So that's my hope.
Yes,
we'll see.
I'm looking forward to reading it. I'm sure it'll be
good.
Great. So, what would you say is your like writing kryptonite?
Writing what? I'm sorry.
Kryptonite, like what derails you or like totally messes up your...
So what I'm the worst at is having a plan. If you give me a plan that I have to stick to, inevitably everything goes wrong and it's a big fat miserable mess, and I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna throw away the plan, start again, because that did not work. Even an outline, I am terrible. Like if I have an outline within 2 chapters, I have made a hard turn left, and I'm like, well, that was a big waste of time. Why did I do that? So I spend a lot of time like writing a story in my brain, in my head, going through all the different parts of it, and I've kind of learned like that's how I outline the best, because it can be very fluid and moving if I'm not like putting it on paper. So that's what I tend to. And then when I have it all up in my head and like organized and planned out, then I start writing.
Oh, so you're more of is it pantser? A pantser writer? Or
I guess, but not really, because like I plan it all out in my brain for like 3 weeks and then I write it down. It's like I write the whole story in my head and then I'm like, okay, let's just dictate this out. It's a very weird system that like all of my writing friends are like, I don't understand how you do this. How do you remember it all? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like it really happened and I'm writing down a memory.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I would think like, what if I lose a detail, or what if I forget a line or a scene or something? But that's really good if you can remember it all that. You have a great memory.
I don't know how I do it. I don't know. Like if they just stick out. Like I like a memory. Like you just remember what happened. I don't know. It's weird. But
so
yeah.
When you're writing, what usually sparks your idea or inspires you to start a story, or like what is your process for that?
It stems from like all different stuff. My kids help a lot with different stuff. Like people talk about the fallout and how did I come up with the idea for that? And literally my 2 older boys were talking about a pitcher hitting a bird with a ball. And that just kind of like spun it off of there. And I started with that. Mom comes, Brittany, Nicole, and we were at a bar, and we were in DC, and we were plotting like a thriller type of a thing. And we were right by the White House, and we were told, don't talk about that right here. Talk about something else. So we literally just started talking about what else could we write about? Well, what about, and we started talking about a raccoon that lived in a billionaire's chimney. And that's how Mom Comes was born. Junior and Beckett were the first characters in that series. And it's funny because at the time she was writing Dirty Truths or Extra Dirty, one of those two. And Gavin was in that book as a character. And Beckett didn't even exist. He was not part of the Langfield world at that point. And she actually went back and added him into the world so that we could have Beckett Langfield.
I'm so glad for
we
that.
almost missed out on that opportunity. Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah. Oh, no. That would be horrible. So when did you come up with like Courtney, like what was your inspiration for him, if it started out with him?
So because that was more of a group effort, a lot of that book was what no one else wanted to write. Like we wanted to have, somebody had to be the long-haired one, somebody had to be the anxious one. So like I just kind of was like, one of them had to have an accidental pregnancy. So I was like, I'll just take that. And when I kind of collected all the stuff, I was like, okay, now what am I going to do with this? Let's see how we can make it into a story. So it was kind of like, like a improv skit where like they give you 17 things and like make a story, go. That's how that one happened. So because when you're writing a series with people, you have less say in certain things like that. And some people are more like definite about what they want to do. And I was just kind of like, well, I'll do whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I'll figure it out. So that one, Courtney just kind of came about by what everyone else didn't want. And I knew I was going to do baseball because my other series is baseball. I had the New York Metros. So I just pulled a character, the catcher, from one of the books and just threw him into the new series so that I could tie back and then move forward and still stick with baseball. So that's how I ended up with that.
So are you going to keep going after Kyle's story, or?
So the coach's story comes out December 1st. Daddy Wilson. And then there is one more book in the series, and that will be the last of the Revs. I actually haven't said who it is. It's called The Freakout. And it is one of the guys on the team that you know. And then from there, I'm going to take Jasper Quinn. He's the new first baseman. And he's going to move to a different team. And Britt and I are moving to a different city, and we're both going to write 2 teams again, like right near each other, and keep with that idea. But I will stay with baseball through another series, and she'll stay with hockey through another series.
I'm excited to read those. I love them. They're my go-to for like when I'm like, I need some time to read and just get out of my head and not worry about things. So I really like that. So, do you ever get writer's block?
I feel like I do every time I start a story where I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to, but I usually work through it. I also co-write under Gracie York with another person, AJ Rainey. And we wrote a book called Pete Pumpkin Out. And that character, the female character, Kara, every time I had to do her chapters, it was like this massive amount of block. And I don't know why I had such a hard time with her, but she will forever go down as one of my least favorite characters to write because she was just so hard for me. Not really sure why, but I just couldn't quite grab onto her.
Okay, I totally didn't know you wrote that, and I loved that book.
Did you? Yeah, I did. It was funny. But
it was so funny. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I'm talking with her tomorrow. That's so funny. Yeah. I'm speaking with her tomorrow.
Yeah, so she's one of my other writing best friends. She and her daughter and my son are like best friends.
So that's so great. You have such a great community of other authors that you can talk to. And do you brainstorm with them when you get stuck? Yeah. So like always phone calls, plotting, chatting, like inevitably we always do. And like we always read each other's stuff super early. So like tomorrow she'll have read some of Kyle's. So she'll, like you help each other and you're like, wait, this doesn't work right. Tweak this. So how about this? A lot of times if you just have a little tweak, it like turns the faucet back on and suddenly you're like, okay, that was the problem. Now I've got this. So it's really good. It's good to have a good group of people. Daphne Elliott, she's another one that she and I talk all the time, plot together, read each other's stuff, complain about our boys who are like kindred spirits. So, did you always want to be a writer?
No, that was never a career path at all. I always wrote. I love to write stories. I love to tell stories, like all of that. I never planned on publishing or doing anything with it. I just did it for fun. And my sister-in-law one day was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm writing a story. And she's like, oh, well, can I read some? And I was like, sure. What do you want? Do you want a done one or a not done one? And she's like, you have done ones? And I was like, yeah. So I sent her More Than the Game, which she read. And she was like, it was a very early draft. Poor girl. But she said to me, why aren't you doing something with this? Like, this is a book. This is not just like a little story that you wrote. You need to. So she convinced me to go to like a pitch fest and talk to an agent. And that's how I started actually the idea of doing something with it versus just writing it to write it.
Awesome. So great. That's such a great story. I love that. So when you're writing, what's like the hardest scene for you to write?
The sex scenes, they're always last. I put them off. I don't want to do them. Some people love writing them. I always put them off till the very end. My alpha readers will laugh because like I'll take you right up to like when they're gonna hook up and then I'll be like hashtag insert sex scene his POV and then I'll skip right over it and they're like, what the heck? That's fair. But I always have the hardest time with them. It's like, okay, well, how else can I say the same thing? I've done it so many times at this point. Because once you've written, like, I think I have, including the Gracie stuff, it's like 14 or 15 books now. And like they each have 3 or 4 sex scenes. So like how many different ways can you say, and they had sex?
Yeah.
So you have to like plan it and plot it and figure it out. And that's always my least favorite part of the whole process.
So on the flip side, what's your favorite part?
My favorite part is always the first few scenes. I love writing those. Those are always fun, like the meet cute part. And however, like having a really funny meet cute is always a lot of fun if you can come up with something like that. Pete Pumpkin Out, that one was pretty good, where like she's locked in the beer cooler, it scares it. That was a really good one. More Than the Game. they met when he flooded her kitchen, like that, like those stories are, those parts are always my favorite. I really, what I love is the funny scenes. I like writing the funny scenes. That's my favorite part of the books.
Yeah, you're very good at that. Like, I'm always cackling with laughing when I read them. I'm always like, am I in public? Like, put my head down, look up, because I'm laughing so loud. So I really like that. So when you're writing the male POV, is that hard for you, or is it easy for you, or do you struggle with it?
No, I grew up with a lot of boys. I have a lot of siblings, boys in my life, and I really have a very easy time with their point of view. I feel like I have way too much insight into their male brain. Like, we have a text thread where they all text, and like sometimes I literally just steal some of the text thread to put it in the book. I'm like, I can adjust this just a little bit, and it's exactly what we just said today. So like, that is not so hard for me. Sometimes I actually have more trouble. I am not by nature a super worrier. I'm not like Courtney. And he was a harder character for me to write because I had Daphne Elliott. She was a huge help because I would say things like, and that doesn't matter. And she'd be like, flag, Jen, I would spiral here. I would be worried about this and this and this and this and this. He doesn't think it doesn't matter. And I was like, okay. So, okay, we got to focus on that a little bit. So those kind of characters are a little bit harder for me, but
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, it's more the personality type. And like I said, Kara was the hardest character that I've ever written.
So who is your favorite character then out of all your books? If she was the hardest, like, who is your favorite?
I didn't think I was going to, but I loved writing Gianna. She was I thought she was going to be hard for me because I'm not typically like the grump. So I thought she was going to be hard. I loved her character. I loved writing her character. I loved how that one was really one of my favorites. One of my other favorites is from one of my earlier series, Corey from More Than a Story. He was one of my favorite characters too.
Gianna, like, oh my golly, her ex, I can't even remember his name, but I hated him.
Jake. He's like the worst character ever.
He was horrible. I wanted to punch him. I was like, you're such a jerk. I was like, how can you talk to her like that? Oh my golly, he made me so mad.
And it was like every time you were like, oh, he's such a jerk. He can't get any worse. And then he'd be like, hold my beer. Like, I can get worse. Yes. That is, yeah.
Yes. So did you have like someone that inspired him? Like, or was it just like all the things you could think of being really terrible person?
It was just like all the jerks in life that you can think about. It's funny because I work in family law during the day. Like, my day job is I'm a paralegal in family law. And the original idea of they were supposed to move in together, and he tells her he's pregnant with he got somebody else pregnant. That I kind of stole from a real life situation where they were about to buy their new house. They were already married, and he's like, oh, by the way, we probably shouldn't buy this house because I got her pregnant. Oh. And it was like the same kind of a deal. So I did steal that idea from a real life story.
Oh yeah, that whole first scene, I was like, I would read it and then I'd be like, I was just like, oh my golly, this guy. Yeah. So yeah, he was really well written, but he was such a jerk.
Yeah,
such a
jerk. He was a very well written jerk. I thoroughly made him hated. Yes, there's no question about that. He is not redeemable.
Yes. So, other than your sister-in-law, is there any other authors that kind of inspired you to write, like that you read and you're like, I really enjoyed that, the way the style they write?
Two of my favorites, well, three really. Janet Ivanovich with her One for the Money series, like, she cracked me up. Sophia Kinsella. The book that I will forever have as one of my favorites is Can You Keep a Secret? That book made me laugh so hard, so much. And then Susan Elizabeth Phillips. She's another one. And the idea that they could write a story that made me laugh, like, that is like what I want to do. So yeah. I love all three of them. They're some of my, and more recently I found people like Megan Quinn and stuff like that. But those were like three that I grew up reading.
That's great. So what do you think makes a great story? Like, when you're writing, like, these are the check marks that I want to make sure I include in my stories.
I think the one thing that I always think you have to have in a great story is that you have to have a reason to turn the page throughout the book. Like, what are you driving toward? If you get to like the 70% mark a lot of times and like, well, I don't think anything's going to happen. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this one. Everything seems happy. So in my head, they're happy. So I like to have like some kind of axe or hanging over at somebody's head or something like that so that you know something's coming. And if you can make me laugh, like if you can make me actually laugh out loud, you're like, I'm a reader for life for you because I love that. I love to laugh.
Yeah. Well, I love that. You definitely do that in your books. So they are.
Thank you.
They're so funny. Like, oh, I love them. So what is the process for you? So you when you write, you mapped it out in your head and then you put it on paper. Then what do you do next? Like, what's your process? Like, do you work with?
So usually then I usually send the first like 6 chapters to a couple people. And I'm like, okay, so do you want to keep reading or are you like, meh? And I want them always to want to keep reading. So I always send like little bits so maybe I'll send like the first 6 chapters and then I'll send 10 more. And it's like that same check. Are you still wanting to turn the page? Are you still wanting to turn the page? Are there any holes? Are there anything I need to like tie up, fix, adjust? So I do that and I usually pick 6 people. It's not always the same 6 people. But it's usually a group of 6 and I pick them for different reasons. Like this particular one with Kyle's, I chose a couple people who have neurodiverse kids so that they could feel like if they felt like it. I picked people who didn't have kids because I wanted to see how the story would read for them because if it seemed too shocking or you needed an explanation, I needed to fill that in for people who don't like have that kind of stuff. And then I always have a couple writers read it, like authors read it, because they read more for plot hole and character arc and like development and like you need to fix this, you need to adjust this chapter didn't quite arc enough, like that kind of stuff. So they check those things for me. So that always comes next. And then my editor gets it and she does her magic. And we go through 4 rounds of edits with her. And then my boss, one of the attorneys I work for, he does my final proofread. He's like the most persnickety person on the planet. And like he goes through and he's always the last one that reads my book and make sure it's typo free.
So no, that he does that. Like that's really great.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's a good system that you have and like a team of people that have your back for that. That's really cool. That's really surprising that he reads that. That's really cool.
Yeah. And he had never read, his wife is like a super reader. She reads tons. He had never read a romance book until I gave him my first one. And he was like, okay, and at first he used to joke like, please don't have typos on the sex scenes because I don't want to. So what he does, he reads, like I printed out for him. So he reads it like on pen and paper and he takes a picture and like texts me the picture of the typo when he finds it. So like for the longest time, he was like, please don't make me send you a picture of a sex scene in a book. Please don't do that. Now he's kind of over it. But at first, it was very upsetting to him if there was a typo there.
You could probably write that into a story, like that whole dynamic. You could probably turn it into a great story.
Yeah, probably good.
So now after you've, been in the publishing world and had, several books under your belt, like if you could go back in time and talk to your newbie self, what would you get, like advice you'd give yourself?
I'd probably say before you publish the first one, get a little more ahead in terms of how many books you have written that go with the series because it does snowball very quick. And I probably would have said develop a little more of a social media because before writing, I had no social media. Like I didn't have Facebook. I didn't have Instagram. And I mean, this was only 2 years ago. So it wasn't like it was like 15 years ago. But I did not do any of that first. And I probably should have done a little more like planning and prepping. But that, again, is not my forte. So my younger self would have been like, I'm not doing that. Whatever. Let's just jump in.
That's great. So, with your writing journey, what's been the most surprising thing that you've learned, either within writing or about yourself?
I think one of the things I learned, and I actually say this in Gianna's book, creativity is hard. It doesn't come always, and it's really hard to trust that it's going to come again. That you have another book in you, that you can write another story, that you can make people love these characters as much as the last ones. It's very surprising how, no matter how many books I have out there and how well they do, that every time I still feel that, like, regularly. So that was very surprising to me. That is like really a thing. Creativity is hard, and it doesn't feel like you can trust it, because it feels like it could just go away.
Yeah, it's like, and then is it sometimes like when you get an idea, which I'm very surprised with your writing process because of that, because like sometimes when I get an idea, I have my own business, I make cards, so sometimes I get an idea for a card, and then if I don't write it down right away, then I'm like, wait, what's that? And it's like gone. Yeah. So I give you props that you're able to like remember that whole story in your head and like put it out there, because I feel like I would just like, it would just like and be gone. So
I get that.
Yeah, it's really a good way to have your brain work, for sure. I'm sure that makes it like a Rolodex, an index file of like everything that you need to put in. And
that's how I feel. It's like a little index file, and I'm just like, okay, here's this one, here's this one, because they all like exist up there in their own little file.
Yeah. So what are your next plans for, are you kind of sticking with romance? Or are you going to branch out to other genres ever? Or are you just going to stick with?
I have a fantasy story that I've written over the years that I'd love to, like, it's romance still, but it has like the fantasy components. I'd love to do that. Britt and I joke a lot that we should write like rom-comacy, where it's like a rom-com fantasy, because that's not something people have a lot of, and we would love to do that, because I don't think I could write a book that didn't have some laughs in it. But we were joking about that just when we were in Nashville together. So that's something I want to do. I would love to do more suspense. I did some earlier in my writing, and I very much enjoy the suspense too. So I would love to do something like that. But time, I only have so much of it.
Well, going back to what you said about the romance fantasy, that's so funny that you just said that. I literally 2 nights ago was with my book club group, and the 4 of us were talking about that, and one of the girls was like, we need a good funny fantasy book, like there's not any. And we literally went on about it. We were like trying to rack our brains for like a good one, and none of us could really think of one. We were like, that's a spot that needs to be filled. So yeah, I totally think you guys should go with that.
That's what we were saying too.
So and
so it was very similar to how we plotted rom-coms as like not on purpose and like spun off. So you never know, you might get a rom-com fantasy from Britt and I together. Not too much longer.
Definitely do that. I vote for that. Which of the characters do you feel is most like you then?
Most like me?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone who knows me says Dylan, so I probably have to go with Dylan. I think a lot of I am a lot like her. I think Harper, who is the next character, she also has a lot of me because of our similar situation. I did not write her like me as a person, but she has a lot like me. If you've read Tumbling Head Over Heels, Kelly in that book also has a bit of me in her.
Yeah. So do you have you kind of put a little bit of you in each of you. Do you have like other family members that you use when you're writing the male characters that you're like, okay, he's more like him? Or do you just kind of clean slate just wherever it goes?
I don't do it with any of the heroes really. Although I do think Liam is my older son. Like, he's very much the mom, I'm disappointed in you. Mom, do better. Mom, what are we doing here? That is definitely somebody needs to plan something around here because it's not going to be you. Um, that's definitely him. So he's definitely in there. And I always joke, Mandy, who is in More Than the Game, the first book I ever published, my daughter, she's older now, but she is just like my daughter was when she was 3 too, like that character.
So when you're writing, like, when do you find the time to write? Because, you know, being a mom, one with kids is hard, but then also adding in the, you know, the struggles that you go through. When is your like time to write?
So one of the great things about my son is he never sleeps, so I don't sleep either. So I'm awake a lot. I also don't watch any TV, which I think helps too. I'm not a TV person, so both of those things tend to make it a little bit easier for me. So I just squeeze it in where I can.
Yeah, that's great. So you said you dictate, so you more talk into the software that you use and do it that way, or?
I just do it in Word or the Notes app on my phone, either one or the other. I don't dictate a lot. People tell me to, but I never feel like I can do a streaming sentence without like being interrupted or pausing or something. So it just, and I'm a fast talker, and I feel like the dictating apps like skip every 3 words or so that doesn't make a lot of sense. So it makes more work for me, I feel like.
Yeah. So you do the typing route, yeah. So do you get time to read? Like, do you read to like kind of give you inspirations and stuff like that?
Or? I definitely read, like, especially at 2:00 in the morning when we're wide awake and not going to sleep. I'm like, okay, let's see what book I can read. I read, and a lot of times it'll be like, I read the Pucking Wrong series in the middle of the night one night because it was just like, I was like, well, what is going to happen now? This is crazy. And I probably wouldn't have read that at 2:00 in the afternoon because I would have been like, I don't need it. But at 2 in the morning, it was exactly what. The other one that I ripped through at like 2:00 in the morning when I really needed to stay awake was Dom by S.J. Tilley. When she's like, first he kidnaps her, and then he drugs her, and then he tattoos her, and I was just like, this is crazy. What's gonna happen now?
What's next? I've had so many books like that, and then that's the other side of when I'm in a story. Definitely, like the fake. I did that. I stayed up, I think, until like, I want to stay till like 3:00 in the morning reading it because I was like, what happens? And I was like, I should go to bed right now, but I'm like, nope, I'm gonna keep reading. So because I wanted to finish it. So because I have the flip side. So my kids are very hyper, and my son doesn't sit still. Like, he's just going. So I'm going. So like the nighttime is when I can like just sit and not have to move around and focus and read. So yeah, so I definitely do the same thing, but for different reasons of staying up late reading. So, what's your favorite trope?
Brother's best friend.
Brother's best friend.
My favorite trope every time. I love that trope. I'm always like, sorry, I'm plugging my computer in. That's my favorite trope. I love that whole like, can't do it, gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
Vibe. I love that one.
Well, you did really well with it in the fake out for
Thank
sure.
You.
So that was really awesome. Well, I'm excited to see the upcoming books and the new series and the spinoffs, and I will be having my fingers crossed for the rom-com fantasy. And I'm going to tell my friends, it's coming. It's coming.
Yes, definitely. October 11th and then December 1st are the next 2 of the Rev series.
Wonderful. Well, I will mark my calendar for those. I'm excited to read them. And I thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today and tell me about you and your writing process and just fun facts. It was such a great time talking to you.
You too. Thank you for having me. I was so happy to come on and visit and chat. I love to do this. So thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you. And like I said, I love the series. So if you have not read the Momcoms, you need to do it. And if you have not read the spinoffs, you're doing yourself a disservice. So go ahead and read them, because you will be having lots of laughs, lots of like giggly moments, and then great banter and just the whole chef's kiss. So definitely read them because you will not be disappointed. And then please like and subscribe. I will link your Instagram and website below so that people can find the books on Amazon and Kindle. Yeah, Amazon Kindle. And then is Barnes & Noble.
The paperbacks are available on Barnes & Noble, and you can get them on the links in my bio too, but the ebook is Amazon and Kindle Unlimited.
So I'll link those below. Please like and subscribe, and join me again next time for another author chat or a book review. And bye-bye for now. Thank you.